Yeah, it is 28 degrees centigrade in Kano, and that is the skyline you see right there this morning on Sunrise Daily. Okay, well, that's the local government is called Udil. That's right. And as a matter of fact, you know the significance of that town, that local government area. Guess, guys, guess. Somebody else. Well, that's because the current emir of Kano, when his grandfather was deposed, he also lived in that town. So a lot has changed ever since then in terms of how the entire city looks. And this is one of the highlights which we are showing you this morning. So there's a 40% chance of rain all the same in the city, slowly, gradually getting off the commercial city. The state as well, known for its huge commercial activity in Kano. So that is what you equally see right there this morning, guys.
A beautiful skyline there. That place is actually the Wudil flyover, just after the police academy in Wudil. Links Wudil village, Bauchi Road by the right, and under that bridge goes to Duse in Jigawa State. So yes, a very lovely site there. I think this was just launched as well. But a very important road there, very important bridge, linking many important parts of that side of the country. And of course, Kano State, like Chamberlain said earlier, known for its vast business environment. It's one of the busiest places to do business in Nigeria, and very profitable. People have been doing business in Kano for centuries. It's such a historic town and known for its controversies, as we've seen recently with the new emir. But of course, a lovely, lovely city with great people who are very, very opinionated too, politically. Very opinionated.
Well, I know they'll tell you the jury's out on that one. They love their politics, the way they play their politics. I mean, every city will do the same thing. So you can imagine what happens if cities are opened up with roads connecting one town to the other, the impact it will have on commerce. And by extension, all this back and forth about minimum wage, who knows? We'll see if we can link all of this where we'll move on this morning. That's right. How about commercial center of Lagos as well?
Well, when is Lagos's turn? We'll talk about it. But for now, we're looking at Kano. Abiyayo.
Well, incidentally, Kano and Lagos share some similarities in terms of commerce. There are those who believe that, you know, Lagos is a commercial, you know, center of Nigeria, but Kano is quite a significant economic hub, you know, as well. I mean, what is it that you want to talk about in terms of commerce in Nigeria, particularly home-produced, Nigerian-produced stuff? I mean, talk about our livestock, which has something in the region of 30 trillion naira in its value chain, and several other things like that. I mean, definitely, Kano is a significant commercial hub from the north. I mean, the umbilical cord, if I can use that term, that connects Lagos and Kano, please don't even try to touch it at all. But guys, forgive me. This view, I'm seeing a cowboy movie. Forgive me. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing. That's all I'm seeing, guys.
Well,
please.
I'm seeing minimum wage negotiation.
You always seen a movie set, Ayo.
I'm sorry. Come on, look to the left and to the right of this.
Looks like the Wild Wild West.
Come on. Exactly. Exactly.
Go on, leave, please.
Exactly, Kayla. Look to the left and to the right of the road, guys. Come on. Come on, look to the left and to the right.
Okay, go and shoot the movie. Come with season 2. You come back, you resume. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, we're just going to go ahead and take you through some of the dailies this morning. You expect that minimum wage will be a huge feature. Your guess is as good as anybody else's. Have a look.
The big news on the front pages of the dailies this morning is still the minimum wage. Let's lead with the Vanguard newspaper. Minimum wage give costs to government today. Tinubu orders finance minister. And look at the riders. As Labour suspends strike for 5 days, says negotiation should be completed as soon as possible. Why we suspend the strike, NLC TUC. Committee on Minimum Wage adopts agenda for today's meeting. Senate, Action Aid asks FG to expedite action to stop industrial unrest. AGF should prosecute states that fail to pay 30,000 naira minimum wage. That's according to Falano. Find the details of that story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. The Nigerian Tribune. Minimum wage. Tinubu gives finance minister 48 hours to present cost implications. Wants committee, states, private sector to work on new wage award. As Labour gives reasons for suspending strike for 1 week. Senate carpets NLC TUC for shutting down national grid Hajj disruptions. Attorney General should prosecute states that fail to pay minimum wage. That's according to Falano. The Daily Times newspaper has the same story. NLC TUC industrial action. Finance Minister to present template for minimum wage today as Labour suspends strike. We won't accept paltry increase on 60,000 naira. Labour insists. That story is on page 4. The Nigerian News Direct has the same story. Minimum wage. Tinubu orders finance minister to present cost implications in 48 hours. The Senate prepares to fast-track bill. Strike not suspended, only relaxed for 1 week, according to NLC president. Airline operators resume operations. National grid restored. Details on page 4. The Daily Independent newspaper. Tinubu asks Edo to present new minimum wage figures in 48 hours. Wants realistic, affordable, acceptable pay for workers. Details continue on the inside pages. I look at the bottom of that page. Nigeria loses over $100 million annually to fish export lull. What does that mean? The writers give an inkling. Trawler owners lament high price of diesel. Say over 40 to 45% of vessels idle. Details continue on the inside pages. Of course, the Nigerian Observer has the NLC TUC story as well. NLC TUC relaxed strike for 1 week as FG commits to a minimum wage above 60,000 naira. Tinubu directs Edo to present cost implications for new minimum wage. That's the story of the Nigerian Observer this morning. The Guardian goes in a completely different direction. World Environment Day. How illegal mining, deforestation, others leave Nigeria's poorer. Story is on page 6. Of course, the strike story is also right there on the front page. And the Business Day newspaper has oil investors wrestle 20 agencies in dollar-starved Nigeria. The details on the front page continue on the inside pages. The writer says, deal with 2 agencies in Namibia, Angola. Those are the papers we have lined up for you this morning.
All right, so there you go. Yes, the minimum wage negotiation is all over the place, which is what we'll also highlight and see some of the backstory and the dynamics, what you need to know, some of the key considerations for all of these decisions that are being taken, that are yet to be taken. We'll talk about all of that. So yes, much as the papers have highlighted that, so guys, we'll just go ahead and take you through some of what to expect that's happening today. We know that the minimum wage negotiation will continue. That tripartite committee will continue where they left off yesterday. So I think journalists, was it to hang on a bit, just wait outside. We'll do that, finish our conversation, and then what? They talk to the media much later when that is over. The story of our lives.
It's actually pretty, well, it's negotiations, isn't it? I want to be able to understand where they are coming from, the sorts of negotiations that will be going on. They probably don't want the media covering all of those details, but they will brief the media afterwards. At least that's what happened yesterday, and our correspondents at least telling us that it's possible that will happen today as well. So yes, the tripartite committee resumes its meeting. Also happening today, and I know we've been singing it for about a week now, the new national anthem. We've been singing it already, but the official presentation of the national anthem will be happening today by the National Orientation Agency, and that'll be happening at Federal Secretariat this morning. So the official presentation of the national anthem today. We're going to be there to bring you the details of that. So the second and third parts, because the new national anthem has 3 parts. So the second and third part is one many people are trying to get used to right now, and we're seeing it being sung everywhere.
They'll wait for you to bring it to them then, since you say you'll be there.
Yes, we'll be there. We're going to be there to get this one. And then, of course, we do have some business going on, Ayo.
You can be sure that business is one of those things that's going on this morning. Business Morning on Sunrise Daily, we'll be talking about finding an acceptable minimum wage. I don't even know how this conversation is going to go, because on the one hand is the federal government. On the other hand is the organized private sector. And there's several other things to consider here. How about the unorganized private sector, the nano, micro, small, and medium enterprises and the rest of them? How are they going to cope with all of these? How do we ensure that the cascading effect does not include further increase in the cost of living? And how do we find out? How do we ensure that the acceptability here doesn't include some businesses going down? Because we recognize that some organizations have already closed shop and some have left the country. How do we find that acceptable minimum wage? That's up for discussion on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily at the next hour.
Yeah, much ado about minimum wage. But then for those who have their wages with Heritage Bank, which is now history, I think they might be looking out for what the NDIC will do today. There was word out there that they'll give them a certain amount of money. Did they say 5 million? Look, we're not sure. That's why the NDIC will be talking about all of that here today. So if you're affected, if you know anyone who is, please look out for this. And then let's hope something justiciable happens when they speak. So that said, let's take a moment. We'll talk about the minimum wage matter. So just hang on. We will be back after this.
Set an agenda, and then we'll come back tomorrow, and then we'll start the work.
Is there a figure in mind, man?
You know, the truth of the matter is that we will improve. And whether there's a figure in mind, you will know that at the end of the day. They walked out, and then we called them, pleaded that they come back to the negotiating table. We were expecting that everything would come to an end, and then we move forward. Because there are a lot of things to do. We've wasted too much time on this. We have a lot of things to do, and the mandate of the Ministry of Labour and Employment is to make sure that poverty is reduced and that we create jobs or create wealth. So why would we sit down and just be wasting our times when we know that time's waste for nobody? So I'm optimistic that we're going to come to conclusion of this so that we'll be able to move to the next level.
Welcome back. Yes, indeed. We've got 2 gentlemen joining us this morning to help us understand what to expect, how to proceed with this talk about the minimum wage. As you've seen, we've got Ahmed Adamu, who is an associate professor of Nile University of Nigeria in Abuja. He is a petroleum economist. He joins us virtually. He will also cross over to Lagos soon. Good morning, Associate Professor Adamu, for joining us on the program today. We've seen some of your write-ups about this minimum wage, your perspective on the matter, where the big question, which everyone seems to be asking at this stage, because only this morning the publications are indicating that OPS says Nigeria lost about 3 trillion naira on the first day of this industrial action. But the president, as we also understand, has given the ministers saying, look, work out an acceptable template to all for this minimum wage. So you start by telling us, you've been talking about it too, writing about it. How do we determine an acceptable minimum wage from your perspective?
Can you take that, your question?
How do we go about coming up with an acceptable minimum wage?
Well, the question of which minimum wage is acceptable from my perspective is not the question. The question is, should we have a minimum wage increase at this moment? Do we have the resources to implement this new minimum wage? And what are the consequences of increase in the minimum wage? So the reason why the workers are clamoring for increase in the minimum wage is to enable them to afford the inflated goods and services. But whenever you increase the minimum wage, those prices will also go higher. So as you increase the minimum wage, inflation will go higher because those extra incomes do not come from economic activity. So you have extra income without extra economic value. So the question is, instead of looking at acceptable minimum wage, let us look at how can we enable the workers to afford these inflated items without increasing their minimum wage. I know in Nigeria, prices are very fast at going up, but sticky in coming down. Now the question is, do we bring the prices down or do we lift people up to meet the price at higher level? Now the question is, if you have to lift people up, it should not be through the minimum wage increase. Because when you increase the minimum wage, you are also adding pressure on the private sector because other workers in the private sector will also be clamoring for the increase in their wages. And this will add to the operating expenses in the private sector because the wages, the cost of labor is a significant part of the operating cost in the private sector. And this will lead to low productivity in the economy, and it also lead to job layoffs. So many people have to be laid off because the enterprises, the employers will not be able to afford higher wages. So you're going to have high unemployment and high inflation. The resultant inflation from the minimum wage increase will also lead to demand for more and more higher wages in the future. As you look at the recent years, almost after every 6 or 7 years, the labor unions will always come back and look for more or higher wages. So more and more wages has never been enough, have never been enough because the increase in the minimum wage has never lifted the workers out of poverty. So the question is, this is a moment for us to think outside the box. This is a moment where we have to do things differently because increasing the minimum wage is not inclusive. If you look at the number of civil servants, public workers, both at federal level and at state levels, they are not up to 10 million people. So we, in the population of 200 million people, now these 10 million are asking for increase in their minimum wage. But the whole economy is also going to suffer because of that in form of unemployment and inflation. And so the welfare increase is not inclusive, even though the private sector will also want to join, but the private sector will not be mandated to implement that, or they have the option of sacking their workers if they cannot afford that. Another effect of this kind of minimum wage increase is on the state governments. The state governments have been complaining of lack of adequate revenue, that the revenue they receive, they spend most part of it on payment of salaries. And now with the increase in this minimum wage, if it happened, the salary budget will increase by at least 25% at the state levels. So the governors may find it very difficult when they are struggling with the revenue to afford even now higher revenue, higher salaries or wages. So at the moment when we have crisis in the educational sector, health sector, and the security, and now we are adding the salary budget, I don't think that's sustainable at this moment, and it's not inclusive. And this will also lead to cut off in development spendings, especially in healthcare and education, because the money we are getting, we are spending it on salary, we become salary nation. We are not building infrastructure to enable people to earn their money.
All right, so let me ask you then. I mean, in your piece, you did an analysis of, you spoke about the CPI in 2011 when the minimum wage was increased, and then the value of 18,000 naira today, which you said is the real value will be about 7,000 plus in today's reality, well, already that huge depreciation is there. But at the moment, you're saying we had to find another way and not by increasing the wage. But we also know that as we speak, which you highlighted in the opening sequence, that the costs of commodities, purchasing power has hugely diminished. So what then would your solution or suggestions be, since people cannot even afford the cost of goods and services in real terms as we speak? So what solutions would you proffer?
You see, economically speaking, extra income should only come with an extra economic value. So these workers, they are not adding additional, they are not adding economic value. They should not get extra income. So what we can do is to frame them or enable them to add economic value so that they can earn money. Because the consequences of increasing people's income without increasing the GDP or the economic value is inflation. So now you are asking for more money, but the inflation is also eating the purchasing power of that money. So higher prices, higher wages, you are back to status quo. So your status has not improved. So my suggestion is, let us look at certain reforms in the workforce or in the civil service, where we look at the code of conduct of the civil service, where we can look at the clause that says workers should not do any kind of businesses. So civil servant, as long as you work with the government, you cannot do any kind of business. The only business you can do is farming or agriculture. But in the modern world where people can be enterprising, they can create business, they can add economic value even from their offices, workers should be allowed to operate businesses, any kind of business, as long as it's not going to interrupt or disrupt their work. So what we can look at is to reduce the working hours for civil servants, allow them to do businesses so that these people can go and add economic value. The money that that you're going to use to give them as extra wages, you can give them that money in form of soft loans. You give them soft loans to go and start businesses. So we want to see workers now engaging in enterprises so that they can add economic value, and then they can generate income from that, and then they can also create jobs for people. But now if you say increase minimum wage, what you're going to have is, first, the consequences on the fiscal responsibility of the states. Now, larger proportion of the population will not be served because this few number of civil servants have to be served. And the marketers will also have to get their share in the increase in the minimum wage. They will increase prices, arguing that minimum wage has been increased, so we have to also get our share. So you're going to have higher prices. We're already in the worst inflation since 1996. And then this is going to go higher and higher. And that will not augur well for the economy. So we're going to have a situation of anticipatory inflation, and people will go back to square one. And the question is, how possible, how realistic is this new wage proposal? Because if you look at the last proposal, the minimum wage increase of 30,000 naira, many states have not implemented it. Now we are asking them to do more, even pay higher. So the implementation will take longer time, but the effect is immediate.
Okay, I want you to be able to get your thoughts on a few of the things that you've mentioned right now. And one of them that you kept saying was, inflated prices. You cannot use the minimum wage to be able to afford these inflated prices. And you did say think outside the box. Now, these ideas that you've come up with that are outside of the box, are they implementable immediately, or are they things that take time?
Yes. It might take time. Any route we take, as long as we want to get a solution to it, it might take time in this country. Because if you have to reform the civil service to make it enterprising, to allow workers to do businesses, we have to change the law that guides the civil service conduct. This one, we can do it quickly. But when it comes to giving them the loans to start a business, that one we can also start immediately. So we can target the lower levels of the workforce because they are the most vulnerable. Imagine someone earning 40,000 in a month in this period. That's not thinkable. That's not possible. So we can target those lower levels of the workforce and give them grants to start businesses, reduce their working hours. Because when you look at these civil servants, the workers, they go to the office and do nothing. They will sleep there, they will play, and then gossip, and there's no productivity. But when you release them, when you allow them and give them money to do and to go ahead and do businesses, that's much better than you giving them the minimum wage increase. That is the popular saying that says...
You've stated now that it will take some time. How long?
Yeah.
Because what the issue is things are hard right now and everybody's looking for an immediate solution. If you were going to put a timeline on when these ideas can start to have benefit to the civil servant, to the minimum wage earner, how long do you think it would take?
It might take at least a year for the grants and businesses to help people at least improve their well-being. But you know, this condition we are is as a result of the manner the current administration has implemented some of their fiscal policies. So we have to anticipate this kind of consequences when you are implementing drastic economic policies like removal of petroleum subsidy, like the devaluation of the currency. These should have been anticipated. And we're already in the mess. So we cannot think of getting out of this immediately. But there should be a strategic and sustainable solution out of it. Because what we don't want is spending money and still go back to square one. So it requires strategic thinking and sustainable solution. And one of the sustainable solutions is the minimal, is a provision of these grants for businesses to thrive. Because in the next 5 years, a new minimum wage campaign will emerge. In fact, it might be less than 5 years. Because if you look at last 7 years, there was an increase, and now we're looking at another one. And again and again and again. And this will reduce the purchasing power of income. So we have this campaign, we have this option. It's either to bring prices down or to lift the people up. But when prices go up and people continue to afford those prices at higher level, so you're already sticking the price up there. But when prices go higher and people don't have the income to buy those inflated prices or inflated items, the prices will have to come down. So now the side of the government can now look at the cost of production. So what strategies can we now implement to reduce the cost of living? Well, you know, we look at inflation. The significant part of inflation is transportation. So if you can have strategies that will reduce the cost of transportation, then we can see prices coming down, and then we invest in food production, subsidizing production of agricultural products. That will also help in reducing the food inflation, which is over around 40% now. So these are some of the strategies that we can use the extra income that we could have used.
You know, Dr. Adamu, there are so many issues. Well,
so
if you can hear me, Dr. Adamu, just 1 second. There are several other issues, you know, that have been raised, particularly in the area of productivity. But there's so much that you've said that I think our guest is itching to respond to. Comrade Amaechi Asogone joins us this morning here in Lagos. He's a former deputy president of the NLC. Thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I don't even know where you want to begin from. Well, there is something that he kept repeating. We should choose between raising the minimum wage or pulling people out of poverty. He said that quite a number of times. What do you make of that? Amongst any other thing, what to respond to?
I quite appreciate his thought, but even in his later submission, where he mentioned workers that are earning 40,000 in this present economy cannot also drive them anywhere. And so he counters the first idea of not just thinking of wage rise. One thing I just want to correct in that submission, with due respect to our professor, is market does not react to demand alone. Market do react to supply. So when we talk about wage rise, we definitely resort to inflation because of possible high cost of goods. The question we should be asking, or rather responding to, is currently, that rice, gari, the foodstuffs, yam, moving to where they are now, which wage was rising. So in the absence of no raising wage, we're already having extraordinary market situation that workers cannot respond to. So as at the time workers were earning 30,000 as minimum wage, prices of rice, gari, yam, and all the rest, they were affordable. They were within the provision of that wage to the extent that you can buy yam, you can buy all of these things for your family and still keep little to save for the school fees of your children. Today now, the entire wage cannot buy any of this. Just a few days ago, I was meant to understand by my wife that yam is selling for 5,000, 4,000, a tube of yam. That alone may scare some people from eating. So when we talk about economy not being stabilized, it goes to what we are doing to promote production. Because absence of government in food production has resulted to scarcity of food in the market. And that is why you see reaction of workers towards wage, because they want to respond to the market as it is today. Whatever Nigeria government will do to actually stabilize or do, that will come after now. Workers must eat, because whether you like it or not, there is no market. There's no subsidized market for workers. And therefore, because we go to the same market, because today no Nigerian worker that is within the range of 100,000 downward can live comfortably. And they are scared. To the extent that even the directive of Mr. President to the minister to make indices and provide a figure for the meeting of today in order for federal government to ascertain what is doable. I tell you, no matter where you rely in your indices, that may not be surviving tomorrow. So it's an unreliable source of our determinant. It's also affecting our chances of getting it done right. And that is why you see the Minister of Labor, they are more or less like, they are not stable in knowing what to do. They don't have any figure in mind. So they are test running. You know, when you are planning, depending on another currency, it's risky. And that is what you have in Nigeria.
Well, you know, comrade, a number of issues, you know, arise from there. But I pick on the word you talked about, productivity. Now, in the current negotiations, there's clearly a significant focus on wage increases. But you also just talked about productivity now, that government needs to be more productive. Private sector needs to be more productive. But then it's only through these same workers themselves that they can be productive. So however, how do you see the role of worker productivity in these discussions? And what measures, you know, do you think can be implemented to ensure wage increases are matched by productivity improvements?
By the grace of God, I am an advocate for productivity. As a matter of fact, any wage that is not tied to productivity is dead on arrival. It means government is losing from the beginning. Because if wage is actually measured with productivity, government will not be reluctant in wage increment. Unfortunately, the reverse is what we practice in Nigeria. Private sector do measure productivity with their wage because it's about profit, it's about giving account at the end of the year, it's about knowing what you have invested and what you have earned. So, but in our own governance system, we don't see salary as cost of production. We see it as a discretionary package that is slated out to give to certain people. If we see these workers as partner to production, we will know that wage is a motivational factor to get more production. So because we are not measuring productivity with wage, that is why you see every state government react negatively to workers' wage. Because they don't know the value. Some of them, not all, some of them are failed to realize the benefit of wage as against production. So when you choose to treat workers poorly, and the professor was trying to advocate for more or less workers to have secondary employment or secondary business as to support their wage, that will derogate the economy that we try to build. Because where people are distracted with business, they will lose focus in their primary duty.
But you also heard the prof talk about the fact that in some states, the workers just go to work and come back and do nothing. I have had a few people also tell me that in certain states in this country, I don't know, in certain states, I'm sure you're also aware of some of these states, that they go to work, they do nothing but just collect salaries. And after that, they go away. So there are those who would also be asking the questions, exactly why should this continue when at the end of the day, people don't really, they collect the pay simply because they have to. There is no productivity attached from the get-go.
That is because we have a government from those states who does not see business in governance. Because when you pay workers salary and they are not working, you don't blame worker. The law has said that a worker will make himself available for work. Employer will provide work for the worker, including some of you. So your own is to come to work, and then you are designated to do some duty, and which you are carrying out. Now, these workers that come to work to sleep or to gist, they have lost the primary purpose in that state. Every ministry have a purpose for governance. So when people have rendered some ministry redundant, workers in those ministries will actually behave redundant. And it becomes a shame to the governor of that state, who cannot turn workers' contribution to revenue. So when the same governor that will complain that people are sleeping will be paying high wage bill for consultancy for the same ministry that workers are sleeping. So who does the job? So it's a problem of idea that they are inheriting from generation, that once you get to power, allocation of revenue that comes from Abuja, once you share, you distribute. You share, they are not thinking of creation. And until we get this culture of creating revenue, teaching our upcoming children that you must create for you to reap. Now, state governors are not creating revenue. They are distributing money. And that system of governance is cheap everywhere. Until we learn that governance is about proactive, creativity must govern your thought before decisions are made.
Now, still on that, do you see a situation where what if a state government, for instance, or even the federal government or some agencies, for instance, say, well, because you guys haven't been productive and we've done everything we can to ensure that you're productive and you've not been productive, we're going to let you go. How will labor react?
Now, letting people go in a country that we are crying for high rise of unemployment, what will be a state government that will even drag that policy will be so ashamed even in its resignation letter.
Well, you also just said now that if they are not being productive, they should
it should be the state governor that should go and get somebody that can fix the workers. See, when an employer fails to assemble workers rightly, the system will collapse to the extent that the company may pack. But when the same company that is failing in a sector suddenly being taken over by people who have vision before money enters their hand and driving that same procedure to gain value, the owner of the former company will be seeing his company prospering in the hand of people who know business. Those governors that cannot put workers together to push state for, and that is why we're pushing also for true federalism. Let there be competition among states so that which you said is not workable in your state, by the time you see your neighboring state prospering in all of the things you complain about, you know that the problem is for you. So workers are truly provided for a purpose. The essence of creating unity in a state is for ABC to come together and form a single state strength. And it's not working. So for me, redundancy, putting workers on redundancy can never be an option because workers were there for production. So if you don't have the machinery to make workers produce, you leave to hire a better coach for the state.
Okay, there's also been this conversation around sustainability of the high salaries, the wage increase. You talked about the fact that organized private sector usually measures productivity,
of course,
in terms of the salaries and everything like that. So there are concerns about the sustainability of whatever wage increase is decided following these meetings, hopefully before the end of this week. Now, the private sector is saying already some organizations are closing shop. Some companies, multinationals, are leaving the country. Now, they are also complaining about that. So, given the economic constraints that we face, how do you balance the need for substantial wage increase with the government's concern about financial sustainability?
You know, misplacement of priority has consequence. Now, when we are talking about wage increment and its effect, the same way we are talking about wage increment and its benefit. So the state government to the private sector, for example, in fact, I work in a company. I may not mention their name for purposes of not advertising anybody, but those that knows me know my company or my primary constituency. In that same company, they pay what they call productivity bonus in addition to salary. In addition to salary, when they get the peak of a project, they provide a target for every month for workers to get to and get extra money, almost running into 40% of your salary. Why would they do that? That means they are governed by production. Those companies that are saying they are closing out, they are losing out in the sector, they are already losing when salaries have not been increased. To tell you that the problem is fundamental, not the wage increment. Shops have closed, industries have closed when wage has not increased. Okay. It tells you that government must carry out its own fundamental function in putting this right, because if the right policies are not in place to actually provide the genuine atmosphere for business to thrive, it means that more business may even close before the end of the week. Well, not the fear of the wage.
Well, there are one or two
it's the economy that is not actually supporting
one or two other things I would like to ask you, but let me go back to Abuja. Chamberlain.
Yeah, Kayla, go ahead.
Well, it's Kayla here. We would like to even actually get from Dr. Adamu some responses to what we've just heard. Dr. Adamu, he talked a little bit about seeing salaries as cost of production and saying that many state governors don't do that. Is there any justification to what we hear from the state governors saying they cannot even pay 30,000, talk about 60 or above 60? Is there any justification to these statements from the state governors, in your view?
Yeah, you see, when you look at my state, for example, Katsina here, what the state government is struggling with to ensure security, stability, and that will come at huge costs. And that's the biggest infrastructure we need to have peace and stability in the states, which we've already started experiencing. And that came at huge costs. But that has to be sustained, because in the fight against insecurity, you need more time to sustain spending in the security sector. But now, if we say we have to impose this minimum wage increase, it means that we have to do trade-off in terms of where to place these funds available. The funds have never been enough. So we have to look at the priority areas, the project, especially health care and education, and then the security. These are the critical sectors that the government need to put more money, especially in the capital spending, because that's where we can see the value in the economy. At this critical moment, anywhere you are placing extra income must be a sector where you are going to get an immediate extra economic value so that you can circulate money, so that you can also create more jobs. But what you are doing is placing more money in the hands of people without adding economic value. That will not help the economy, and that will continue to fuel and feed the inflation. And then people will always come back and look for more, because at this moment it's inclusive investment that government must be doing. What can we invest that everyone will benefit, not some group of people? Where can we invest so that we can have economic value? If you look at the civil service sector, some ministries are already overstaffed, and civil service recruitment is more like poverty alleviation. And people are employed without necessarily adding value. I can bet you more than half of the civil servants can be sacked, and there is going to be operation smoothly, and the ministry will continue to operate smoothly. So what I'm saying is, we're not saying that they should be sacked. What we are saying is we should put the money where it will serve the economy. So the governors will always don't want this kind of minimum wage increase, but they will prefer to invest in infrastructure that these workers, if they want to invest in ventures, in businesses, they have the enabling environment to do that.
Okay, so Dr. Ahmed, that brings us to another question, which has to do with blockages in the wastages that we see in governance, because that is a major issue as well. For many Nigerians who are listening to this conversation, there's so much wastage in government. Why can't we cut down on all those wastages and then redirect the money even though you made a very interesting statement, an increase in income without economic value, but for many people, they need to be able to survive. It should take a whole year for your ideas to come to life. So is there any way that these wastages can be blocked and then the money rechanneled towards the increase of minimum wage? Would that be beneficial in any way, in your view?
Yeah. To get out of these economic situations, this kind of situation, I think I believe we have to do so many things at the same time. One of them is the investment in the right sector. Another one is you talk about reducing the leakages. So, but just reducing the leakages does not guarantee or just warrant an increase in the minimum wage. So we should do it from both sides. We should save money to invest. But I agree with you that some people need to be bailed out immediately, but that should not come from the minimum wage. And that's why I proposed the idea, let's target some group of the workers and give them some capital to do businesses. But that will also entail changing the law to allow them to do that. And if you look at the private sector, that's where we have larger number of people being employed. And if this private sector are not provided with the environment to continue employing people, then they will close businesses. Productivity will go low, and there's going to be more scarcity, and inflation is going to go higher. So I agree with you, we should reduce the leakage. We should also redirect the money that we could have used to pay for the minimum wage and invest it in social critical infrastructure. So I agree with you, we should reduce the leakages.
Let me take it. When you speak about putting money in hands of those who are not impacting productivity, take for instance, what would you recommend for a state like Lagos? They've got the resources and many questions as to should they not be paying way higher than any other state? What do you think of that?
But just because you have money, that does not mean you put it where it's not appropriate. So if Lagos has the resources, they should direct it in critical sector, not increase the minimum wage, even if they can afford it. Affordability is not the question, but whether it is a right investment or not. So we have to look at where can we put these resources and where can we get higher multiplier effect. And so you put your money where you have higher multiplier effect. But when you risk investing in nominal income, you're also reducing your capacity to serve more people and your capacity to do more. Because when government can do projects with less money, but when inflation is higher, then they will need more money to do that. So even if you have more money, you have resources, that will not be enough for you to do critical investment. So having the money for Lagos State is not an excuse for them to say, okay, we can go ahead and increase the minimum wage. It's the economic consequences that will follow after that one.
So does that then mean that states like Edo, who say, look, we'll pay 70,000 naira, notwithstanding the challenges, are they making a very huge economic mistake because they are way lower in terms of revenue than Lagos?
Yeah. I think they should not pay them directly in form of minimum wage. They would rather give them business capital or invest in infrastructure so that other citizens in the states will also benefit. So we are not serving only the civil servant, you're not serving the workers, you are serving the larger proportions. The civil servant are not more than 20% of the population. So you are not going to invest your money. What you are doing is just increase in the income of the people. So that will make them to afford inflated items. But other people whose income has not been increased, they will struggle to afford those items. And because marketers will also want to get their share in the minimum wage, they will always increase the price. So that will also keep increasing the ancillary inflation.
Because, I mean, even in states like that where taxation, if you're trying to set up, even if it's a mom and pop shop, the authorities, they swamp on you, you pay all sorts of taxes, both the ones the ones you have no idea about. They come to you with the tenement rate, you must pay all of those things. So will it be tenable if they then say people are not working? In fact, they're even creating more ministries. So how will they then say, look, we can't put the money in these areas because they think that almost all the ministries there are putting in their shifts?
Yeah, you see, even if the workers are working, there are so many ways we can give them bonus or compensation for the effort they are making, but not in the form of minimum wage increase, minimum wage, because this minimum wage has this kind of impression that will be seen immediately in the market. But when you say bonus or productivity bonus or performance allowances, that will also enhance productivity of the civil servants. Okay. So you set target for them and say, okay, if you perform at this level, if you achieve this indicator, you have this extra bonus. So it will make them to sit up and perform higher to acquire this. So that will not be seen. The effect of this policy will not be seen in the market. But the moment you announce a minimum wage increase, the next day, then you're going to see prices going higher. So increase the minimum wage is more like increase in the petroleum price. So everyone will also inflate their prices because people have more money in their hands.
All right. It means that whatever negotiation continues today, I guess they have to factor all of your submissions into those conversations. Well, we do thank you for talking to us today, Dr. Ahmed Adamu, a petroleum economist, also an associate professor in now University of Nigeria, Abuja. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Ayo.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Comrade, you listened to him. I know you want to respond, first of all, to a few things.
I think my reaction to some of his submission, I don't know why he continued to emphasize the needless point for wage. Because I want us to understand that when we talk of employment, there's no employment without wage. So a service without compensation of wage is incomplete in terms of salary vis-a-vis wage in the place of work. Wage is a determinant. Nobody does anything for free.
There is no question about that one. There is no one who is arguing with the fact that every worker deserves his wages.
Yes.
His wages. However, the challenge is how much. What would be your own recommendation?
It's difficult to recommend to an ongoing team when negotiation has commenced because a proposal has been served, negotiation has started within that basket, offers has been made, deduction has been made on the part of labor, and they are still within the basket they offered earlier. They didn't go there to change figure to go beyond above 1 million. They are rather going lower. Government is coming upward. And that is the movement of negotiation. The fact that the one asking is asking more is immaterial at a point because the target here is the finished outcome. So by the time they conclude, which I expect them to sign this document before the middle, or at least before 20th of June, because that also proves the point of the minister that there are other economic issues that need attention. And we shouldn't also spend much time on wage, as if the negotiation is adding to what they're earning. Rather, they're spending more. The cost of that negotiation also is part of government expenditure.
However much, is agreed, it's going to be a lot. A heavier bill than previous on any, productive organization, be it government or organized private sector. What are your thoughts on sustainability, particularly at whether the organized private sector level or at the government level?
The people that even have a challenge is actually because government, to the best of my knowledge, not necessarily the government of today, but government over time have failed to give adequate support to private sector. Because this power that everyone that produce whatever they do in Nigeria do so by self-funding power. And that has also added deeply into the high cost of goods in the market. So when we talk about wage outcome, there are people in the private sector who haven't looked at their wage bill for running costs in terms of diesel, fueling, and all the rest. In addition, because workers will not say because you're paying me well, once the law is passed for a new minimum wage, all the company in the private sector will ask their employer for wage review, even though they are any higher than the minimum wage. There is a provision in every condition of service that suggests that when a national minimum wage is concluded, parties will come to the table to agree on a acceptable figure. But
you are aware of this situation where some states were unable to pay 18,000 naira minimum wage, were unable to pay 30,000 naira minimum wage. Mr. Falana is advocating that the AGF should take them to court for as he said, breaking the law, not paying those bills. But then their own realities are also right there in their face. Do you see a chance where, be it the federal government or state governments or whoever, and some organizations in the organized private sector who cannot afford to pay whatever is agreed, do you see a situation where there will be job losses? What could that consequence also be?
For me, incapacity, or call it inability of a leader to do what is right may not be an excuse in governance. Those governors that have failed to do the needful, I continue to advocate that we must see beyond ready-made income. And in as much I agree that all states are not equal, the minimum of them all is more than minimum wage. Because what do they earn? Go to the wage bill scale of this state and you see the percentage of wage to what they spend totally. And then the question is, what is the wage doing for them? If you don't channel income of workers proper in your state to get more money, you see this is a country that ministries that should be raising revenue for Nigeria are depending on loan to run their ministry. So if those things are not addressed, the demand for wage will continue. Even this minimum wage they're about to sign, if the needful is not done to the economic structure itself, in order to harbor peace, stability is not about reduction. Okay, can anybody recommend reduction of wage as a means of surviving Nigerian economy? That workers should let go some pay in their wage of 30,000. So the idea is because products are going higher. When nothing is working, no economy is actually stabilizing behavior. When a worker fund his own water, fund his own light, fund his own transport, people are buying cars not because they want to do so, but because even where they work, there is no also public transport route to the location.
This
and a lot is happening because the country is heavy in terms of planning to execute.
I guess, just as you said earlier, I guess the coming days are going to tell a lot. And I'm very sure that pretty soon we're going to come back to have this conversation, because one of the concerns I have is how do we ensure that this that we're doing now is sustainable on all counts, including for the worker themselves. For now, we have to thank you very much for being here this morning. Comrade Amaechi Asugune is a former deputy president of the NLC. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. I'm very optimistic that minimum wage is sustainable in Nigeria.
Well, we'll probably have to convoke a conference on that one. But this conversation continues right now on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily with Ladi.
Well, hello, welcome to another trading day right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's get you straight to the markets now. We see oil prices are still down, just like yesterday, below the $80 level for Brent. And we see WTI still trying to hold on to that 70s region there, $73.07 a barrel. Key eye now, all eyes now on that $70 level. That's for WTI, if that's going to break at some point. But we see Brent $77.38 a barrel, down 0.2%. So we're still seeing investors reacting to the output data we got over the weekend from OPEC+. Moving on to the foreign exchange market now, we're still seeing some kind of stability right there with the Naira against the dollar. We still closed yesterday 1,489 Naira for NFM to the dollar. Previous 1,495 Naira, 0.46% appreciation for the Naira in the official window. For NAFEX, 1,476 Naira. So it's still stable for this week. That's looking at the foreign exchange market, Naira against dollar. So other top stories now, the World Bank's warning that food price inflation remains alarmingly high in low and middle income countries. According to their latest food security update, over 59% of low-income countries and 63% of lower middle-income countries are grappling with food price inflation exceeding 5%. Key staples are seeing significant price hikes, with cereals up by 6%. Maize, that's surging by 21%, while wheat prices have also increased. There's a slight dip in rice prices globally, but the World Bank is urging action to address food insecurity, particularly in vulnerable communities, and calls for governments and international organizations to work together to ensure access to affordable food at this time. Well, following the industrial action by organized labor, which shut down activities across the country yesterday, the president has directed the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, to present a financial guide for negotiations towards a new minimum wage within 48 hours. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, said this in Abuja after a federal government delegation on a new minimum wage met with the president in Abuja. Take a listen.
We thank Labour that they have suspended, through to their awards last night, they've suspended their strike early this morning. And government on its side, you can see that the president has just summoned a meeting of all those who negotiated on behalf of the federal government, led by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation. We're all there to look at those issues, and then the president has directed the Minister of Finance to do the numbers and get back to him between today and tomorrow, so that we can have some figures ready for negotiation with Labour. Let me say that Mr. President is determined to go with what the committee has said. He is also looking at the welfare of Nigerians. Like I've said earlier, government is not against, it's not an opponent of Labour discussions. It's not an opponent of wage increase. But what is there is that government is always desirous of ensuring that there is a balance between what government pronouncement is and what the realities are on ground. And therefore, we'll work assiduously to ensure that whatever we do, whatever promises the government makes will be kept. That's the idea of this meeting. A wage award is not just that of the federal government. Like I mentioned earlier, the subnationals are involved, the organized private sector is involved, the labor is involved. It was labor that staged a step out during those proceedings. Now that we have come back to the negotiating table, all of us will work together again assiduously within the next 1 week to ensure that we have a new wage for Nigeria that is acceptable, that is sustainable, that is also realistic for all Nigerians.
We have a pause now for the strike. Definitely, Nigerians felt the pinch Monday and Tuesday. We already saw 4 queues yesterday, but that has disappeared this morning. Thank God for that. But what next? That's what we're going to be discussing. Now, joining me on the show is Mr. Shola Obadimu, the Director General, Nigerian Association of Chambers and Commerce, Industry and Mines and Agriculture. That's Nasima. Joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you. Good morning.
Great to have me here.
And I'm sure it's a relief right now. We have a pause. This time, we're already feeling the heat. Yeah, sure. You know, yesterday, Nigerians felt it. I didn't have light till about late last night, so I was able to pump water, thank God. So I was able to bathe, this morning. But, looking at what you've seen, so far, the minister has 48 hours to come up with a template. Yeah. What are you expecting and what are you recommending?
Now, you see, it's we have to look at it a bit deeply. I represent the private sector. Well, we represent the private sector. And you see, I understand the labor's viewpoint, but we have to be conscious of some deeper issues also. Labor cannot be speaking as if government is the sole employer. The private sector people, in fact, let me tell you, most private sector organizations are already paying more than, as high as, I think it was at 60,000 naira that we deadlocked before this present, initiative. So most private sector employers are already paying something close to that.
Even for the most lower staff, the most vulnerable staff?
I mean, we can even look at channels here. But it's government agencies. Some states are still grappling with the 30,000 minimum wage, even as we speak. So Labour cannot be addressing the issues as if government is the sole employer. The private sector, and these are things we know. Last year, let me talk about the big multinationals. Many of them ran losses for 2023. They audited reports. And on top of that, they were heavily taxed again. Imagine a company running a loss of 136 billion naira, getting taxed by another 36 billion naira. And some of them are thinking of moving or shifting. Some of them, many of them, they have descaled their capacity.
Yeah, we got the announcement last week for Kimberly-Clark. Yeah, those ones are planning to...
In fact, I was refraining from naming names, but we know from our viewpoint, we are aware of several organizations that have either descaled, closed shop, or thinking of moving or moved. So we have to think, they are grappling with enough challenges as it is, rising energy costs,
The cost of finance has gone up. Loans are between 30 and 40%. So, I mean, infrastructure hasn't really improved, you know. So those basic things are there. So now, of course, a minimum wage issue will come. Cost of labor will also rise. They can only pay out of what they have sold. You know, I mean, you can only give out what you have. So we have to balance these views together. So there is no point setting what people cannot pay. But again, like I said, I understand the labor viewpoint. They are looking at government alone, and they are probably looking at the government profligacy, wastefulness at government level, unnecessary spending. Why should a minister move with 10 cars, each costing about 200 million naira? And that's aside from the cost of maintenance, cost of fueling. So it could be annoying for some people that these people are talking about 30,000 to fuel one of these cars. You may have to spend 80,000, 100,000 naira. So it's insulting to some people. They may see it from. So that's the pointer to government to watch their, to set the right leadership example, to cut their costs, so that it will be easier to carry people along. If they are living large, if you are displaying this level of flamboyance, I mean, how do you convince people to
How do you convince people you can't afford, 490,000 naira minimum wage?
So that's the disparity in views.
Right.
You need to carry people along, set the right tone, set the right examples. Moving in a couple of 10 cars to me is unnecessary.
Right.
I mean, this Nigeria, when Murtala was attacked, it was in his Mercedes 230. No pilot car, no escort car. General Obasanjo, when he was military order head of state, was using a 504. And we were even more prosperous then. So what has changed? We can't be living like Americans. Is our GDP close to the American GDP? So we need to be more realistic at government level, live on a lower level. Let's tighten belt at that governmental level.
So it will be easier.
When people see that example, then it will be easier to talk to them. And then they will be easy to reason with you.
All right, but talking about this, what we're seeing now, what we're expecting from the finance minister, what should we see? What are you expecting? Basically, because he has 48 hours to get this done. What do you expect to see?
When the last minister spoke, he was talking about something that is sustainable, that is feasible. In order not to drive private sector businesses into extinction, there might be some increment coming up, but I would not expect something close to 400,000, definitely. Right. Maybe something between that 60,000 and the 100,000. Maybe they will arrive at something. But whatever it is, we shouldn't even do something that will be injurious to our naira.
Right.
What's the point of having 400,000 and using 100,000 to buy a loaf of bread? Does it make sense to anyone? Do we want to go the way of Zimbabwe? So all these things, they have to be looked at critically.
Yeah, so much to look at, definitely. But now, I got this report from the IMF there showing that over 720,000 public servants, the federal government had over 720,000 public servants in 2022. Okay. So looking at this number, definitely, it is a lot. And we're seeing the likes of, massive companies like Google, Microsoft, cutting, labor force at this point, with the issues, the macro issues at this time. Talk to me about what, the government should be doing about cutting, this excesses, at this point, because I don't know why you need 720,000, public servants right there. What do you think?
I think beyond the numbers now, it's the larger concern is about the level of productivity that each staff brings to bear on the system. But again, there is also call it the CSR effect. Government wants to keep as many people as possible in employment for social reasons, such that at least, let's be, it's more of a social responsibility. Right. Because, when we go into government offices, you see a lot of people coming in at 10 a.m., leaving at 2 p.m. So there are issues around productivity. If all of them are productively engaged, you will bring more to the system than you are taking out. That's the way, that's what the private sector does. You bring more into the system than you take out. That's why private sector can afford to pay salaries. So government can, and the natural consequence of all this wage increase usually will be downscaling the labor, the staff strength. Usually that's the trend. Each time there's an increase in minimum wage, government retrenches staff. But I'm not so much concerned about the number, but, make sure everybody that is in the system is productively engaged and can add value into the system. That's where the question lies.
Right, so it's about productivity, not about the number of
It's not
staff.
necessarily about numbers.
Right.
Government can let go of areas that are strictly business and restrict itself to core civil service departments. Any agency that looks like a commercial entity can be farmed out under one arrangement or the other, maybe commercialization, privatization, whatever. You let that one go to run as a business. But the core civil service, you have to make sure that every person that's in the civil service is constructively engaged and is productive. Right. That's the bigger issue. Okay,
then definitely we know the macro issues at this time. We're seeing inflation at new highs. We're also seeing food inflation rates. That's also over 40%. At this time. So definitely, these issues are what is informing, we raise minimum wage, definitely. Yeah. Seeing how devalued the Naira is at this time. So I'm wondering if we're able to, get most of these macroeconomic headwinds out of the way, then 100,000 Naira wouldn't be bad as minimum wage, I'm guessing.
It is these economic indices that we are even mostly worried about. The need for them to stabilize. We can't have a situation where cost of inputs into business, they change on a daily basis. Inflation keeps rising, interest rates, they keep rising. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for businesses. It's not even good for individuals. Because even at individual level, you plan your income against your expenditure. You can't buy something at 100 Naira in the morning and the evening it's already costing 250. So there is a need to stabilize the forex rates, the interest rates, have a cap on inflation. You see, we have to let the Naira breathe. Otherwise, we are injuring our currency. And that's why I'm saying, what's the point of earning 400,000 if you are going to spend 100,000 Naira to earn a loaf of bread? So there is a need to, because, formerly, businesses used to have yearly budgets, which they run too. But where their cost of inputs change on a daily basis, how do you plan? How do you operate effectively? Because that means you'll be changing your prices of your goods and services on a daily basis too. But the consumer's pocket is not quite elastic. People are actually earning lower, realistically. Because if you're on the same wage 2 years ago as at now, you are probably earning, in terms of what it can buy, about 30% of what we were earning 2 years ago. And that's why inventories are growing for businesses if they cannot sell. And that's why some businesses are operating at 19% capacity. I know these companies I'm talking about. I don't have to name any names. A company that's supposed to be operating at 100% or 60 minimum, running at 19, 20%. It's not good for businesses.
Right, and looking at our debt, level at this time, because the government needs funding. Yeah. To make this happen, increase minimum wage, they need funding. They need all that, revenue, coming in from oil and, other sources at this time. But looking at where we are, at this time, let's look at the economy now, the Nigerian economy. If we get this minimum wage, increase, but we continue, with status quo at this time, where's this economy going?
Government needs money. But I think this 4 yearly terms for politicians is a problem in itself. It's not allowing us to plan forward, maybe for the next 20 years. Okay, the difference between these countries where our youths run to and here is because those ones are planning for the next generation. So our youths can go there, find jobs, because they are planning for excess capacity in terms of everything, in terms of jobs, roads, energy, supply, everything. So after that can come in and be effectively absorbed. But if we are eating our tomorrow today, what are we leaving for the next generation? And that's basically the difference. So now, to expand government income, it's not just about taxes. I'm just naming an example. It's not just about focusing on taxes. We have a lot of, several undeveloped areas. Our mineral sector is not even being looked at properly. That's an area that can employ millions of people, generate more taxes for government. We are not looking at it. If you optimize the agric value chain, that agric sector, right now there is no preservation. You can only eat oranges 2 months in a year. You can only eat bananas 2 months in a year. That's not right. Even in South Africa here, you eat oranges whenever you want. You eat bananas whenever you want, without any significant change in prices. So we've not really exploited the potentials of the agric sector, and that is another sector that can employ far more people and generate more taxes to government. So rather than just look at the 4 years and say, okay, how do I make more money within these 4 years? Let me tax anything taxable. And unfortunately, it's the people that are already paying taxes that are being taxed more. So the unexplored areas, they remain virgin-like, and nobody is thinking about them, thinking that, okay, maybe to do anything serious about these sectors may exceed my 4-year term. Let me just tax the people that are paying taxes more. That's not the right way to look at things.
So there's really, we need to do a lot, when it comes to
do a lot.
Leadership, at the leadership level.
Yes.
How we spending for the future.
In fact, ideally, we should have some policies, some plans for the future that ensures that whichever government that is in place, doesn't derail from that plan that we've got. They key into it. Every activity keys into it. Look, South Africa, no matter what we say about them, okay, they have inadequate energy supply issues also, and so on. But they've got a strategy for the African continent. Multi-choice is everywhere. MTN is everywhere. Stanbic Bank is everywhere. That's the right way to think. And they're in Africa, are they not? What kind of policy have we got that compares to that? Right. Yes, a few of our banks are outside, but it's more of an individual effort by the banks rather than anything being coordinated by any arm of government. And we have to think deeply. That's the issue that I
think deeply. Definitely, we have a lot to think about at this time, and now we have this pause. I guess we should just expect the best and some kind of consensus, about minimum wage,
so that we can move forward.
So we can move on.
But again, as a last word, let me say this: beyond our knowledge of economics, beyond our knowledge of statistics, whatever, wisdom is key. Without wisdom, you can't have purposeful leadership. That's very important.
Very well. Thank you so much. We'll leave it there now, Mr. Shola Badimu. He's the Director General of NASIMA. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Ladi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Handshake. Thank you so much. All right, so after the break, we're going to head straight to the markets. I'm going to check on what's happening with the banking counter on the NGX. That's in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Well, the banking counter on the NGX still on a downtrend at the last close. Yesterday, we saw 1.45% drop for the banking counter and insurance. So financial services still taking a beating right there in the market as usual. This is just what we've had for a couple of weeks now. So let's talk to Damilare Simiyu now, macroeconomic strategist, AfriInvest Research and Consulting. Good to have you on the show. Good morning.
Thank you, Ladi. Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, so we've seen most banking stock prices fall significantly since the announcement of the revocation of a banking license for Heritage Bank. Is this reaction, are investors overreacting, at this time?
Once again, thank you, Ladi, for having me on this show. I mean, in this sort of environment, in this sort of macroeconomic climate that we have now, where everything's already fixed, you wouldn't be surprised seeing that sort of knee-jerk reaction from investors as regards the performance of banking tickers in the last 2 days. You recall that even when you look at the broader economy perspective itself, I mean, there's a lot of pressure that makes people to be very sensitive to any change in the environment. You have inflation at record high of like 3.7%. You have pension, even from the labor side. Monday, when the announcement on Heritage Bank was made, was when the labor began their strike, which yesterday was eventually suspended. So that tension, that pressure is coming from the macro side. And when you then look at the banking sector to be specific, over the last 12 months, that sector has been in the spotlight. Of course, it's part of the agenda, reform agenda of President Tinubu. But again, the fact that the sector has been under spotlight makes everything that happens there to draw market or investors' reaction. We've had some policies that a lot of market watchers are still analyzing on what the effect could be on the banking industry going into the future. We have policies like the net open position ceiling that the CBN placed on bank, where they can only have asset liability mix that's not more than 20%, and for assets equity mix that is of zero level. So that NOP window is one of the areas where banks used to hedge their asset and return impressive number. Saw them return impressive number in the last 3 years, even with the slow growth in the economy. But because of this dynamic, right, people are now beginning to see how will bank be able to fare if this NOP position has been redefined, like what we currently have now. So in the middle of all this, we also have other policies like the increase in CRR to 45% from 32.5. We also have recently pronouncement that the banking sector should recapitalize, and the CBN defined the sort of capital expected to be share capital and share premium. So virtually all the banks are looking for money now to meet up new recapitalization standard in the next 2 years. So all those things that are still in process, shaping the industry. So hearing a news of like a bank, the license of one of the, maybe not the major bank, one of the focused lender in the economy will always drag a major reaction. And interestingly, right, looking at the NGX broadly, the banking sector is the only sector year to date that is in the negative region. And that is because of the sort of negative reaction to banking tickers in Q2, because in Q1, the banking sector was also up there. So the long and short of what I'm saying is that the sort of reaction we have seen on the banking tickers in the last 2 days were informed by broad macroeconomic dynamics and the excessive spotlight on the banking industry, given the reforms that are ongoing.
Right, and we're gradually approaching the second quarter earnings season. Based on your assessment, what are you expecting?
So in terms of expectation around earnings for Q2, I think it will still be a mixed bag. Mixed bag in the sense that sectors that are heavily exposed to FX, which is the major driver of the unimpressive performance of a lot of businesses since last year when we shift our FX policy, is still very active. So we think that those sectors that are very exposed or highly exposed to FX usage in terms of importation or in their production process, sectors like the consumer goods, the brewery sector, and even the ICT, you might see their numbers not coming in at an impressive level. But we still think that the banking sector, the oil and gas will still remain resilient in terms of earnings for Q2, because even though one of the major ways whereby banks hedge their asset and make earnings from it, which is the NOP, has been redefined. We think that banks still have other windows to sweat out their asset and make gain. And for the oil and gas guys, even with the lower Naira exchange rate value, now Naira is trading in the region of 1,003, 1,004. It will still be a good one for oil players, because the Naira conversion rate, the Naira equivalence of whatever their earnings from oil will still be high. But sectors like insurance might have their earnings it will be positive, but not so very strong because of weak penetration. But by and large, we think that it will be a mixed bag. Some will return positive earnings in Q2, while some will still be pressured by the FX impact.
All right, we'll definitely be looking out for the Q2 earnings and see what that tells us about the Nigerian economy. Thank you so much, Damilare Mashibi, who's the macroeconomic strategist, AfriInvest Research and Consulting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Nadi, for having me.
All right, that's it from me on Business Morning. We'll get a summary of today's stock market close later today. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye-bye.
Well, as you can see right there, Dr. Olusanya Awosan joins us this morning. He is right here with me in the studio. He's the Executive Chairman, Center for Ethics and Civic Virtues. He's a former senior special advisor to President Jonathan on public relations. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
Let's begin with what you consider, the impact of the federal government's policies in recent times on Nigerians generally, particularly their purchasing power.
Well, maybe I should start by quoting Amaka Cabral that said, what I'm going to say today that we have not said before. As the committee also said, an object will continue a state of rest or uniform motion unless there's an express force acting. So we continue to talk and deliberate. We are living in times of very difficult, very harrowing experiences.
Okay. Well, there are so many issues to look at in that particular matter when you consider the fact that Nigeria's economy has been on its own roller coaster for a while. Talking about the policies of government, you want to talk about, first of all, about the subsidy removal, which a number of people consider as, perhaps a very major straw that broke the camel's back, or that touched on the camel, reducing government expenditure and redirecting funds to other critical sectors. Of course, that has also informed the fact that state governments have a lot more resources at their disposal. Of course, this naturally led to increase in fuel prices all across the nation. It has also increased the inflation figures. The country has seen high inflation rate driven by increased fuel costs and broader economic pressures. No doubt that has had significant impact on the purchasing power of Nigerians. Well, there are those who also consider the purchasing power parity as some form of devaluation. All of that, let's see how it goes. But, when you consider all of these conversations, Dr. Awosan, one of the questions you want to ask is, please, are we in the right direction?
Are we in the right direction? Well, I hope so.
You hope so?
I hope so, yes. Because let us, where I come from, the elders will say, when a young man falls, he looks straight to see whether the daddy or mom is there. When an elderly man stumbles, it's not falling out, he looks back. I think 8 years of General Muhammadu Buhari has been an 8 year of calamity in this country. That regime brought Nigeria on its knees. Now, having said that, I want to think that the courage to remove the subsidy on petroleum, the act to remove the subsidy on petroleum is courageous in a way. But I think the then incoming president was probably not aware of the depth of rot in the mantle that his party man, General Buhari, was passing to him on that very day. Looking back, I know that you'll be thinking that a lot of work will have been done before that particular decision was taken. But I also said that the removal of subsidy in itself, it is not that it has not produced any good at all. After all, it has increased monetary allocation to states and local governments. What are the state government doing with all this money? Actual porphyry that is going on at that level of governance. Irresponsible and irresponsible governance that is going on at that level in itself is a problem to. It's one of the causes of the problem.
There are those who would also point to the fact, Dr. Awosan, that the federal government has a significant problem in that the issues, all of the initiatives that they come up with, all of the policies that they initiate, all of the ideas that they put forward, they are definitely from the federal government. And just as you said, there are those who would say, well, they can excuse the state government simply because the federal government didn't even sit properly before taking it such a major step.
But this is supposed to be a federation. A
federation that's any significant decision by the federal government cascades significantly across the states.
I agree with you, but look at what is going on at the various states level. Look, take for instance a few states. Lagos State, where the Lagos State is doing fairly well. If other governors are doing as much as you have Lagos State government doing, we will not be in this much difficult situation.
Is that the problem? Who should be taking that on? My apologies. Who should be taking that on? Because a good number of times when people talk about government policies, no one is looking at the policies of the states. People are looking at the policies of the federal government. So who should be giving attention to the policies of the states or the impact of the states on the Nigerians, if not the people living in the states?
It is unfortunate that the media and the critical people always focus on the federal government.
So it's not a problem for the media. How about, you know, that we have to follow the news? That's what we do. Now, whatever issues we see that are prominent, we take these issues on. You are talking about this now. We are taking on the issues that concern the states.
Our major focus has been on the federal government.
And why is that?
It is so because maybe because the federal government itself behaves larger than life, loom large within the system. The states as the federating unit, they are as important. They are very important because they are closer to the people.
You served with you served with the president before, yes, so and you perhaps can even speak to this. What was the body language of the federal government towards the states when you were in government?
Well, you know, President Jonathan was a very friendly person, you know, and his approach has a kind of human face that most of the time he usually get across to state governor and say, my brother governor, he was a governor before, so he has a way of linking with them. But apart from that, what I'm saying is this budget, is this the federal government that is running the budget of, for instance, of Kogi State? Is it the president that's running the budget of Kogi State?
You haven't really answered my question. Okay. What was the body language of the federal government, not the president, the federal government when you were in government, to the state? I'm asking this question against the issue that you are raising, yes, that we seem to be giving the state government a pat on the wrist while we are bringing the heavy hammer on the federal government. How should we be doing anything different?
No, I am not saying that we should. I'm not saying that we should absorb the federal government. But I'm saying that as much as we are looking at what is happening at the federal, we should be mindful of looking critically to of looking at what is happening at the state government.
How do you do that?
You do that. The citizens, you know, the price for freedom is eternal vigilance. We have to be vigilant. There are human rights groups all over in states, and they should be more critical of what is happening in the state. For instance, if people have gone to bed in Kogi State, what the issue now between the former governor and EFCC will not be there. We just go over, look at that recklessness that the man is being alleged.
But it is an allegation.
It is an allegation.
There is no proof.
I said all of it is the man is being alleged of a very reckless act. Is he not reckless? Very reckless now in a system. If an individual,
it's an allegation, now you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying look, listen to me. I said the man is being alleged of a reckless act.
Okay.
I have not I've not said the man is a thief. I said the man is being alleged of a reckless act. I am not talking of the act. Is the act itself not reckless? Assuming that the man did it. You get the point. If the act is very reckless, Very reckless. In a state where salaries are not paid, you are now, the man was alleged of paying school fees in that reckless manner. That is why I said we must look at the states. A lot of things are going on in the states. That, look, for instance, look at the loans, the debt that have been, the debts that they are plunged, some former governors and current governors have plunged their states. If such monies has been used in the area of agriculture, in the area of providing certain infrastructure, and what is now coming to them now through the subsidy removal is used to consolidate that area. The living condition of people in states will not be in this state. Look, most citizens are living rather on the level of beasts rather than human beings. It's very harrowing. Very harrowing. There's no. I'm short of what to even describe it.
But that's not to say that the federal government doesn't have a significant job here. And here is why.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about two policies.
Yeah.
Fuel subsidy removal.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't the federal government, this federal government that removed the fuel subsidy, it was this federal government, or rather it is this federal government that is executing it.
Yeah.
Electricity tariff increase.
Yeah.
It was such a jump. 300% increase. Automatic increase on everything. And so we don't blame that on state government.
State government, yes, I agree.
We blame those on the federal government. What could, in your opinion, the state governments have done to ameliorate the challenges that the people had to face?
Let me tell you, there are almost resources that are being wasted at the state level.
Such as?
Look, what is the impact of all these loans that have brought heavy debt on the state? What is the impact? Can you find any impact in the life and the living of the citizen? No. In terms of infrastructural development in the states, do you find any impact of such omugos? So go and look at the debt now. Go and look at all the debt that they have plunged their states. Some of them today now are owners of estates. What were they doing before? Where there is problem at the federal, there is also problem at the states. Look, the local government, the Attorney General is just trying to salvage the local government. The local government, they just take some change and give to the chairman. The chairman also go on frolicking. You get the point? What we are saying is this. We need the attitude of leaders and the followers need to change. Before you can expect development, there are certain values that must be operational within the community, and we need a kind of discipline to be able to ginger the development in every area or every areas of our life. Well, why we are not saying that the federal? No, you mentioned the issue of the electricity. The people have already dealt with it. It has received condemnation generally at every level that it cannot work, and it's not working. Are you getting me now? And it's not working. The removal of subsidy, we have said that there was no proper preparation for that removal. Before you announce a policy, you must banter it with your team. There was no team even at that time that the president announced that subsidy was gone. Let me tell you also that I also believe that despite all those errors, can we now say that totally? Well, I heard from an expert that said it's a subsidy. It's not subsidy removal. It's subsidy reduction. That one is another discussion entirely. Can we now say that this subsidy reduction has not brought any advantage to the states? The money, in terms of money that is accruing to the state, how have they accounted for the money, the increase in allocation to states? We should look at that area. Generally, the policy. If I talk about the policy, my own take is this: that before we can make any appreciable success in terms of development in this country, we must change our attitude to agriculture and agro-allied industry. when the minister was talking a few months ago, was talking about dry season and dry farming. What do you see? Do you see any activity in the we must go back. We must go back to agriculture and agro-allied industry. One, apart from the fact that it provides opportunity for job creation, diversification of economy, and we also have the opportunity of export. Unless we increase production and we are able to earn, that we can begin to talk of how can we put this. How can we put this?
No, it's interesting, Dr. Olson, that you mentioned agriculture now, and I know that you've written quite significantly on that as well. You know, growing up and looking at all the things, all efforts that we have made in terms of agriculture before the first military incursion, in 1966, agriculture was our mainstay. During the First Republic, even during the military era, agriculture was quite a significant thing for us. In the second, before the Second Republic, the federal government at the time and the military government at the time began to divert Nigeria back to agriculture. It was the windfall of the oil that saw us go down the path that we went down to at the time. Here we are today. How many years on? Since 1977, 78, if memory serves me right, the Operation Feed the Nation was initiated by the military government at the time. And almost every government successively had tried to bring back this whole orientation about agriculture. The Obasanjo government tried to do the same thing when he came back as a civilian president. Even now, this government, the Tinubu government, almost as soon as he came in, declared a state of emergency on food security in the country. And part of the initiative at the time was, look, we have to collaborate with the states. How should that collaboration happen is the question. So let me ask you, do you think the states have this kind of orientation about agriculture?
Well, I said no. But I like to look at one area. The state of our universities and research institutions is in total disarray. These are the areas where we can get support for agricultural development and for agricultural and agro-allied development. Today, look at the state of our university. Many people would like to abuse ASU. The ASU people never fight for themselves most of the time. But the state of the university has been their major concern. In those days, in the Western region, the School of Agriculture, the More Plantation, those were the institutions that was given support to agricultural development in the West. And the result was clear. This helped the Western regional government to go into other areas of development. Went into television, went into so many areas. Roads were constructed with the support of the impact of the agricultural development. In those days, you don't find a government official standing akimbo on the road and take picture that they are declaring road. It is PWD. The business of road development and road construction is PWD. You will never find the minister, the prime minister talking about we have consulted road, we have consulted road. The PWD was just doing, major focus was on agriculture and exports to cocoa and all other things. Brazil did it. Look at the result. Vietnam did it. Ethiopia, they are doing it. Look at the result. Why can't we do it?
What do you think?
And we have more resources.
Yeah. What do you think is our challenge? Because I'm aware, on the one hand, the president has made that declaration. Just a second. On the other hand, is that even the multilateral finance institutions like the AFDB has been making efforts through the special agro-industrial processing zones, and some states are right now being funded towards that project. So what kind of limitations do you think we have?
I think lack of imagination on the part of leadership, and not putting right people in some critical position. I believe, for instance, look at the area of power that you spoke of. Look at the man that was removed. look at what happened in Aba. Today, Aba is no longer part of the lot. They have distinguished Aba because of provision of at least 24 hours electricity. Very soon, the impact will become clear all over the world. So we must look for people. There are very many people. You know, there are certain positions you cannot use political consideration to put either a minister or a director general or anything. You must look for people who are competent, who have antecedent, who can show their antecedent. When Akinwumi Inshola was made, when Dr. Akinwumi was made the Agri Minister, we saw the difference. I was one of those who worked. I mean, our department worked with him to exhibit most of the products. I saw it myself. It's not that I read about it. So such a person, we still have very many of them. Agric is not where you come and speak grammar alone.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about agriculture and you also talk about the Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who happens, by the way, to be the AFDB president now. And he is part of the people championing these special agro-industrial processing zones. Some state governors, particularly in the north, have taken trips all across the world to the headquarters of the AFDB to have conversations about this execution. Now, what are the challenges you see in the way for them? If agriculture is going to go anywhere, there has to be significant partnerships. What kind of partnerships do you see? Because we understand the special agro-industrial processing zones is a government-enabled, private sector-driven project.
Yes.
What are the inhibitions you see in the way?
According to those who are involved, the means that most of the states are not ready to go along. They speak, they address press conference and all this thing, but most of the people who are coming forward to partner with them have seen that there is no enough seriousness and commitment from most of these state governments. The state governments that you put on from the north, you will look at such individuals. They come out, they argue about it, and they go ahead and put everything into action. But most of the state governors that you see that are wasting money all about are finding it difficult to commit their state into all this. And that's why there was a man who was speaking about it on the traffic radio. He said, look, that they cannot imagine that after saying so many beautiful words, that you will go there and the type of attitude that most of these state governors have into agri. And these are states with historical linkage with agriculture. Their forefathers developed those states through agriculture. So, you know, I think we have wrong people in the leadership, very many at the state level.
Okay. My colleagues in Abuja would have a question or two for you. Go ahead, guys.
Yes, indeed. Listening to everything that has been said so far, I mean, a lot really has to be done. In what directions do you think that policy should be going as we look into another 3 years or so, the Tinubu administration?
I think for this administration, I would advise that there's enough of orthodox approach to things. And that we should apply wisdom going forward. For instance, there is a policy that food should not be maybe this government is not going along with food importation. But when you look at the security problem facing our farmers and the daily increase in food producing, Muritala did it and it brought down the prices of foodstuff. For as a temporary measure, I think we should also look into that area. The policy that we want to encourage homegrown production and all this thing. Look, it is when people are alive and well that they can wait for those policies to germinate. There must be an immediate that we bring succor to the Nigerian people.
Well, my apologies, we're running out of time. We have run out of time, actually, and it's an ongoing conversation. I'm pretty certain that we're going to have to bring you some other time because the initiatives are not just going to, we need more education for our people on them. Dr. Olusoya Awusan, Executive Chairman Center for Ethics and Civic Virtues. He's also
Civic orientation.
Okay. Well, he's also a former SA to President Jonathan on public relations. Thank you again for your time this morning.
This is my pleasure.
Chamberlain, a last one before you go?
Yeah, just before we go, I mean, we did talk about the Heritage Bank scenario in the opening sequence of the program. Well, here is what's going on at the moment because he's currently briefing and he's telling reporters right there that at the moment, that's the managing director, Mr. Bello Hassan. He says, look at this, the total bank deposit at Heritage Bank stands at 650 billion naira, and he says the loan portfolio is over 700 billion naira. But he did say, though, that the NDIC is looking forward to ensuring that the loan repayment is done within the next 6 months.
And indeed, this next part is the one where many depositors have been hearing rumors about since yesterday and asking questions. We've been inundated with so many questions about this. And the MD, that's Mr. Bello Hassan, is assuring that all depositors are currently being verified for onward payment of insured benefits of 5 million naira, while depositors with insured deposits above 5 million naira will be paid upon the sale of the assets of the bank. And he's noting that the payments of all affected depositors will commence before the end of the week.
Now, here's the part that many are trying to wrap their heads around. He says that the total depositors at the bank stands, look at this, 2.3 million, with 90% of them having total balance, guys, total balance of less than 5 million naira. That's described. That's what's going on at the moment. So we'll get you more details as we get them on this channel. So we do thank you all for watching. That's the program today. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Osop. Goodbye.
And I'm Kayla Megwa. Have a great day ahead.
Amaya Makinde, a beautiful one.